Hello and welcome back, everybody. Um, so in this episode, I want to talk a little bit about traffic patterns and how do we know if they're left or right? Because I had a great question asked by one of the viewers who asked, it was Howard McEwen, about 3 weeks ago, and he said that I'm binging on your videos. One question: is there a standard point to make your downwind turn? And do all planes follow the same pattern, or is the pattern a general guideline? And of course, I answered him in the comments. Um, But I thought this would actually this brought to mind that it's a pretty good topic to cover in terms of when you're approaching an airport, how do you know what pattern to use? So we've talked about left-hand patterns, right-hand patterns, um, and so forth. So there's a couple different ways we can figure that out. So this should be a relatively short video. One way is we can take a look at the chart. And for instance, I have a snippet of a chart. This is a screenshot I took of a location in New York, this is on the website SkyVector, which is a fantastic free site for looking at aeronautical charts. Now on the chart, we can see like Deerfield Valley up here, regional. Um, the elevation is 1,953 feet. It has lights from sunset to sunrise um, on looks like 2.6, and there's the CTAF frequency. Um, no big deal. You see that in most airports, but sometimes, hopefully you can see my little mouse here. Sometimes at the bottom, like on William H. Morse State here, it's got the ASOS and for frequency, elevation, lighting. Now note L with an asterisk next to it means there's conditions on lighting. It's not constant. So you need to read up on the airport information to find out. And maybe it's pilot controlled. You click the mic, 5 or 7 times or 3 times, depending on intensity that you want. But anyway, back to the patterns. We can see down here there's an RP, and that's indicating there's a right-hand pattern. Because in the U.S., if there's no listing, such as a Deerfield up here, then you know it's a left-hand pattern. And that's definitely true in the U.S. I'm not sure about other countries, but certainly for the U.S., you always assume left-hand pattern unless indicated otherwise. And this is one way they indicate it. They do RP. And that says, okay, right-hand pattern. But after the right-hand pattern indicator, there's a number, sometimes a comma with another number. So what this is saying is that it's a right-hand pattern for runway 31. The reciprocal other runway, though, since it's not listed, would still have a left-hand pattern. Same thing down here at Harriman and West. It's a right pattern for runway 29. Reciprocal runway in the other direction would be a left-hand pattern. So that's one way you can tell by looking at a chart. Now, another way is something called segmented circles. And they kind of look like this. And don't mind the sketch. It's pretty crude. I just did it this afternoon here with GIMP. And I should also add real quick that this is not to scale by any sense of the imagination. It'll actually be a lot smaller, like down in a section. But I just made it very large for the purpose of the video, but it would definitely be along one of the runways, and you might have to kind of look around for it to see it, because it won't be this big comparative to the runway. It'd be actually quite small, possibly even just the size of the triangle here. Might be as big as it is when you're flying over it. So just keep that in mind. You don't be looking for this gigantic segmented circle. Anyway, so we'll continue on. Um, so here's your runway. We'll say north is up. So 3-6 is this way, and 1-8 going down this way. You'll see as you fly over the airport, not all airports have this, but some do. There's a thing called a segmented circle. And so you fly over, at least 500 feet over pattern altitude, preferably like 1,000, whatever. Take a look down and see if you see a segmented circle, because you have no idea, let's say. And if there is one there, it'll look kind of like this, probably red and white dashes down here. In the middle, this triangle, it's really supposed to indicate a wind direction indicator. And in the center of the segmented circle, it could be a big triangle like you see here, because it points into the direction the wind's coming from, or it could be a windsock. Um, so we're going to use that big triangle that says it points to the direction the wind's coming from. So that's our indicator. This is okay. The wind's coming from the north, so we want to land on 3-6. And if we're going to land on 3-6, this is your pattern. These little legs that stick out. That's your pattern. So if we're going to land on 3-6, we need to come in from the left side, make a left turn onto 3-6, so that's a left-hand pattern. And if we were going to come in on 1-8 up top, then we'd say, okay, we're going to come in this way, and we have to make a left-hand turn to get onto final, because this would be our base leg. So base and final, base and final. So base, left turn to final, and so that's the left-hand pattern as well. Now it can get a little tricky, because sometimes you'll have something like this. And look at that. Both legs are looking the same way. So for 3-6, we come in, left-hand turn to final, so that's a left pattern for 3-6. It's a little different. 1-8, we come in on base and we make a right turn for final. So that means that runway 1-8 has a right-hand pattern. And now, reasons for that, noise abatement pretty much is one major reason. And also, let's say that this side of the runway was all forest, but this side was a massive development with multi-million-dollar homes in it, and they've all petitioned and said, we don't want airplanes flying over our houses. So therefore, you get a left pattern for 3-6 and a right pattern for 1-8, and it keeps all the traffic away from the big fancy development. It's unfortunate, but that's the way life goes. And they do these final and base legs will line up with the runway. And if you come to an airport that has multiple runways, it can look like that. What's that big bug? Well, that's your segmented circle still. But in this one, you got some weird intersecting runways. And so for this one, we'll call that 3-6 and 1-8 still. And let's call this, I don't know, 1-0, 10. Or not, no, I'm sorry, 0-1 for 10 degrees. So 0-1 and 3-5 or something like that. So if we look at this, we notice that there's a leg here and it sticks out and goes this way. So that's actually parallel to this runway. So this would be the indicator we look at. So we know we have to left turn into, what did I say, 0-1, and a left turn into what would be like 3-5 or, no, I'm sorry, 1-9. So yeah, and then this one parallels 3-6 and 1-8. So we have, look at that, we have a right-hand traffic pattern to come into 3-6 and right-hand to get into 1-8. And, that's one way you can keep traffic away from each other at the ends of the runway. So if you always do right pattern into this runway, you're not going to end up with some, crossing traffic with somebody who's trying to land this way at an uncontrolled field, let's say. I'd hate to see this kind of setup at an uncontrolled field, but you never know. But that's the point, is these segmented circles will be able to tell you which way things are going and how you can figure it out from the air when you don't know. So that was pretty much the gist of it. Thank you, Howard, for the question. And if anybody else has more questions, put them in the comments. I'll be happy to try to answer them to the best of my ability. So take care, and we'll catch you in the next one.